Prapannaham sada shyama guru padarvindayo tasya preranaya tasya divyadesham vadamyaham Dhyanamulam Gururmurti Pujamulang Gururpadam Mantramulam Gururvakyam Bhaktimulam Gururkripa Mannatha Shri Jagannatho Madguru Shri Jagadguru Madatma Sarvabhutatma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Kamalnabhaya Namah Namah Kamalpadaya Namaste Kamalekshana Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tagvangha Devamatma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukchurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. Dear devotees, we'll have a few minutes of Nam Sankirtan, and after that I'll explain about Sharad Poornima Mahotsav. Guru Govinda Govinda Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
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 Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
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 Govinda, Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda. Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda. Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda. Guru Govinda, Govinda, Guru Govinda.
श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की। Tonight we're celebrating Sharad Poornima, which is also the appearance day of Jagadguru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj, and it's also the anniversary of the inauguration of our Mandir, Shree Raseshwari Radha Rani Mandir. So I'm going to explain the connection between all of these things in tonight's lecture. First of all, Sharad Poornima. Even before Jagadguru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj descended on this earth on this very day in 1922, even before then, Sharad Poornima had a special significance. So let us start there. Sharad Poornima is the day, or I should say the night, that Maharaj happened. Maharaj is a Leela performed by Radha and Krishna very rarely on this earth planet, and in that Leela they reveal the most amazing bliss that exists. They reveal that here on earth. And Maharaj happened in the middle of the night, at midnight, on this Sharad Poornima night. Sharad is the name of this full moon. Poornima means full moon. And Sharad is the season that we're in. So it's the autumn season, which comes after the wet season, after the monsoon season in India. And it's considered to be the best weather of the whole year. It's not too hot, not too cold. It's just the most pleasant time to be outdoors. So this is the time of year, this Sharad Poornima, this full moon of Sharad is considered to be the best full moon of the whole year for that reason. And it was on this night that Maharaj Leela happened. So many Leelas of Radha Krishna happened. Millions and millions of Leelas happened. Why is this Leela so important? The word Maharas. So Maha means great, and Ras is a very special word. It actually comes from the word Ras. Ras, you all know. Ras. The nectar of something, the essence of something. So in terms of divine bliss, Ras is synonymous with Anand. That's why in certain places our scriptures say, Raso Vai Saha, defining God. Taittiriya Upanishad says, He is Ras, which means He is divine bliss. And at other places our scriptures say, Anando Brahmeti Vyajanat. That Brahm is Anand. Anand and Brahm are synonymous, and Anand and Ras are synonymous. So Supreme Brahm, Supreme God, is Ras. But there are different kinds of Ras, because Vedas say, Sa esha rasanam rasatamaha paramaha. Rasanam, plural. So many kinds of ras. And out of all those kinds of ras, rasatam, ras, rasatar, rasatam. Tam means the best. Just like priya, priyatar, priyatam. Hamare priyatam, Sham Sundar, my most beloved Sham Sundar. So rasatamaha, paraha, paramaha, the absolute supreme ras. This phrase from Vedas indicates something. So this is starting to reveal to us that ras is a divine thing, yes, and God is synonymous with ras. But within the divine world, there are different types of ras. Some people say, paths are many, but the goal is one. In fact, the exact opposite is true. The path to God is but one, bhakti. Surrender, loving surrender of the mind to receive His grace. Bhakti is the only path to God. So paths are not many. There may be many ways of doing bhakti, that's fine, but the path is only one. But the goals are many because God is multifarious, multifaceted. God has unlimited powers and unlimited qualities. And thus, the divine blissfulness is revealed in unlimited different ways. To get some idea why Ved is using this phrase, rasanam rasatamaha paramaha, the absolute supreme out of all the rasas, There's an absolute supreme ras. So, although it's beyond our experience, but we can understand a little bit just by some other explanations of Vedas. Like Ved will start here on earth and stay. Saishanandasya mimansa bhavati yuvasyat sadhu yuvadhyayakah ashishto dradhishto balishto tasyeyam prithivi sarvat vittasya purna syat sa eko manusha anandah. One unit of earthly happiness is being defined. Veda is so precise. Ekaha ananda, one unit of earthly sukh, earthly anand, is defined as what? It's so great that none of us in this life has ever experienced that. You would have to be the emperor or empress of the whole earth. One single ruler of the whole earth planet, you. And you're young, healthy, intelligent, kind, generous, beloved by all your subjects, with a nice supporting family, everything at your disposal, the entire wealth of the earth planet is yours. If somebody had all of that, that would be considered one unit of earthly happiness. So we have a small fraction of that. But Ved goes on to say, Te ye shatam manusha anandaha sa eko manushya gandharvarnam anandaha. The lowest abode of Swarg is called Manava Gandharvalok, Manushya Gandharvalok. So if you multiply that one unit of earthly happiness by hundreds of times, you get one unit of happiness of the lowest abode of Swarg, Manava Gandharvalok. And beyond that are 9 other loks. Deva Gandharvalok. So this Taittiriya Upanishad, it said Saishanandasya Mimansa. This is an examination, an investigation of all the different types of pleasure and happiness in the material world. So it started by defining one unit of earthly pleasure. Then said, multiply that by hundreds of times and you have the one unit of pleasure of Manava Gandharvalok. Multiply that by hundreds of times and you have one unit of pleasure of Deva Gandharvalok. Multiply that by hundreds of times and you have one unit of pleasure of Pitrilok. Multiply that by hundreds of times and you have one unit of pleasure of Karmadev Lok. Multiply that by hundreds of times and you have one unit of pleasure of Nitya Deva Lok. And multiply that by hundreds of times and you have one unit of pleasure of Indralok. Multiply that by hundreds of times and you have one unit of pleasure of Brihaspati Lok. Multiply that by hundreds of times and you have one unit of pleasure of Prajapati Lok. Multiply that by hundreds of times and you have one unit of pleasure of Brahmalok or Satyalok, Brahma's abode. So these 10 abodes of Swarg, imagine that level of pleasure of Brahma's abode. Even if we didn't say hundreds of times, if we just said 100 times. So in each, as we went up each abode in Swarg, we multiply by 100 times. You move the decimal by 2 points. So we did that 10 times. So that's 20 zeros. That's 100 billion billion. So imagine if you were the emperor of the whole earth and were young and good looking and healthy, and of course you were wealthy and you were beloved by all and you were intelligent and generous. Whatever pleasure you would have at your disposal, multiply that by 100 billion billion times and you would have the pleasure of Brahma's abode. And yet all of that is nashwar. It's all temporary. A Brahma Bhuvana Loka Punaravartinorjuna Gita. Even if you go up to Brahma's abode, you have to return to this earth. So the pleasures over there are also temporary. Ishtapurtam manyamana varishtham nanyat shreyo vedayante pramudha nakasya prishthe te sukrite nubhutvemam lokam hinataram vavishanti. Mundakopanishad. Nakasya prishthe, even up to Brahma's abode. The one who strives to go there is the ultimate fool, because they have to put so much effort and make so much sacrifice to earn a trip to Brahma's abode, a vacation in Brahma's abode, and it's all just a temporary pleasure. Even while you're there, you're not getting perfect happiness. You're feeling something is missing, the same way you feel something is missing over here. Maharaj, when he gives this example, he always says, imagine when you would be dissatisfied even with that level of pleasure and status and everything in Brahma's abode, yet you're still dissatisfied. You have the same level of dissatisfaction as you have today if you go to Brahma's abode. And yet we think by becoming a millionaire or a billionaire in this world, we're going to find satisfaction. It's really a good joke. So, Ved has taken us right up to the topmost abode of Swarg, and we can't imagine that level of pleasure. But there is more beyond that. Of course, there's the divine world. So in the divine world, now we start getting to the area of Ras. God is Ras, so He reveals Himself in different ways, but three main ways: as Brahm, as Paramatma, as Bhagwan. As Brahm, He's formless, and that bliss is called Brahmanand. As Paramatma, He has a personal form, His almighty, godly form, like Mahavishnu. That ras over there, that bliss, is called Aishwaryanand, the bliss of Almighty God. That's considered to be infinite times greater than Brahmanand, which is infinite times greater than the bliss of Satyalok, Brahma's abode, which is 100 billion times greater than the greatest happiness of this world that we can't even imagine. And that only takes us to Aishwaryanand. Beyond that is the ultimate bliss of the divine world called Premanand, the bliss of divine love of Ram and Krishna, Sita Ram, Radha Krishna. Rup Goswami has said, Brahmanando bhave desha chet parardha guni kritaha naiti bhakti sukham bodhe parmanu tulamapi. Some more math for you. Rup Goswami says, you take Brahmanand, the bliss of formless God, which is infinite times greater than the bliss of Brahma's abode. So you take that Brahmanand and multiply it by one parard, 155,520,000,000,000. And that much Brahmanand won't equal to one Paramanu. Paramanu means the absolutely smallest particle of something. It won't equal to one Paramanu of Premanand, of Shri Krishna's divine love. So now you have some mathematical guess, some mathematical framework to understand just what is Premanand, what is Krishna's divine love. But even within the field of divine love, there are different kinds of ras. See, one could love Radha Krishna with dasya bhav. So they would get dasya ras. One could love Radha Krishna with sakhya bhav, and they would get sakhya ras. One could love them with Vatsalya Bhav and they would get Vatsalya Ras. One could love them with Madhurya Bhav and get Madhurya Ras. And even within Madhurya Bhav, where we love Shri Krishna as our beloved, there are 3 classes of Madhurya Bhav. C class, called Sadharani Rati Madhurya Bhav, where we love Krishna, but we love him to make ourselves happy. We don't think of his happiness. Samanjasarati is B class Madhurya Bhav. There we also have regard for Krishna's happiness, but we basically have the same regard for our own happiness. And in Samartharati, A class of Madhurya Bhav, we have only regard for Krishna's happiness, and we only want to be happy in seeing him happy and making him happy, in serving him for his happiness. So the gopis are the example of this A class of Madhurya Bhav. Rukmini and the queens of Dwarika are the example of B class Madhurya Bhav, and Kubja is the example of C class of Madhurya Bhav. So you have all these different ways of loving Radha Krishna, and depending how we love them, we get that flavor of ras. So it's all been divided into 8 levels in this field of divine love. The Premanand is said to be, okay, you have Prema Bhakti, then you have Sneha Bhakti, Man Bhakti, Rag Bhakti, Rag Bhakti, I skipped one. After Man Bhakti, Pranay Bhakti, Rag Bhakti, Anurag Bhakti, Bhavavesh Bhakti, and finally Mahabhav Bhakti. So you have 8 levels of prem. And all of these are revealed in different leelas. So depending what type of quality of her personality Radha is revealing in that leela, and what part of his personality Krishna is revealing in that leela, and how the two are interacting with each other, that all determines what kind of bliss they're giving to their devotee saints. And what they themselves are experiencing. They're always in different types of prem samadhi, and accordingly, different types of ras are being poured. So this is why our scriptures indicate, by using the word rasarnam, many, many kinds of ras. But then Chandogyopanishad says, Sa esha rasarnam rasatamaha paramaha. There's a supreme, absolute, supreme kind of ras. So what is that? That is Maharas ras, or just Ras ras is really the same thing. I'll explain the difference between Ras and Maharas in a minute. For now, just think of Ras. What is Ras? Rasarnam samuho rasa. Our scriptures define the word Ras by taking the word Ras. So it's actually created from the word ras. So again, rasarnam, plural of ras. All those kinds of ras, samuha, the conglomeration of all the different kinds of ras you can get in any kind of leela of Radha Krishna, the samuha, the combination of all of that is ras. So all the kinds of ras together makes ras. We call that ras ras. What is ras? Ras Leela cannot be understood. I mean, imagine. This is the ultimate bliss of the divine world. We can't even imagine what it would really be like to be emperor of our whole earth planet. And the pleasure of Brahma's abode is 100 billion times greater than that. We have no chance of imagining what that's like. And yet Brahmanand is infinite times greater than that, and Aishwaryanand is infinite times greater than that, and Premanand is infinite times greater than that. And within the field of Premanand, this Ras Ras is the ultimate thing. So what is Ras Leela? We can't really know, but we know what the physical description is. The physical description is that Radha Krishna dance with gopis, sing and dance. We become so reserved as adults that we almost lose touch with that part of ourselves that understands that singing and dancing is really our favorite thing to do. I was just at someone's house the other day when I was in New York, and they have a small child, I think maybe 2 years old, 2 years old. So they just put on some music, some Bollywood music or Bhangra or something. And as soon as it starts, you don't even have to teach the kid. The kid just starts jumping up and down. It becomes so happy, jumping around and dancing and just, completely uninhibited. So I was just thinking that, this is our nature. Truly, that's our nature from the time we're kids. And most of us become much more inhibited as we grow. And we no longer can easily access that part of us, but that's there inside of us. That part of our heart is in there. So even just thinking of it from that point of view, you can imagine the delight and the joy of this Ras Leela, where gopis get to sing and dance with Radha Krishna. Just from a material perspective, we can get some imagining of that. But then when you factor in that gopis are actually having Krishna's hand on their shoulder while they're dancing, Brahma Sparsh, the divine hand of God, and God is singing, and you're dancing. Even when we see a very skilled dancer in this world, it can be somewhat mesmerizing. We're so amazed and fascinated. We get pleasure out of that. How much pleasure would there be in seeing Radha Krishna dance? And now with their grace, you can sing and dance as well as they can. And you're all singing and dancing together. So in Ras Leela, gopis are surrounding Radha and Krishna. And there could be different configurations where sometimes Krishna makes himself appear in more than just one form. But in Maharas Leela, it's called Maharas because there are uncountable gopis, infinite gopis come to Vrindavan and take part in Maharas Leela. And Shri Krishna multiplies his form into infinite forms. So he's dancing with each gopi individually. In the center, Radha Krishna are there, and then there are concentric rings of gopis all around. But each gopi thinks that out of everyone, Krishna has chosen to dance with me. Because why would she look anywhere else? Krishna's here with me. And in that Ras Leela, they go through all different kinds of samadhi. And even though they're in samadhi, they're still dancing. So Ras Leela happens many times in many different ways. And Ras Leela is always happening in the divine world. But here on earth, this ultimate bliss of the Ras Leela revealed in its infinite form that we call Maharas, where infinite gopis participate, that only happens once in a day of Brahma. I think you've had enough numbers for tonight, but a day of Brahma is more than 4 billion years. And his night is also more than 4 billion years. So Radha Krishna descend on the earth once in one day of Brahma. So after 8.64 billion years, that time comes again. And it happened to be just 5,000 years ago. So it's very recently. It's like yesterday, basically. So once in a whole kalp, Radha Krishna descend on earth with the express purpose of revealing this Maharas ras on the earth. And then that's documented by Veda Vyasji and told by Shukadevji in the Bhagavatam. And then we get to know something about Maharas. When Maharajji told us a little something about Maharas during his Ras Panchadhyay series of lectures, he said, we can't enter that palace. We're not qualified yet. We have to reach the status of the gopis. Then we can become qualified to even hear about Maharaj, what really is Maharaj. But he said there's no harm in just looking around the outside of the castle, the outside of the palace. You can see what the architecture is from the outside, how beautiful it looks, where the doors and windows are, how the gardens are surrounding it. You can't actually know what's happening inside the palace, but you can take a little stroll around the outside. Or when you're walking down a street and there's a garden, but the garden has tall hedges, so you can't see what's inside, but you know it must be beautiful because there's a fragrance, a very deep, subtle fragrance from many different kinds of flowers that's wafting out of the garden. So even though you can't see the flowers in the garden, but you have some guess what's there inside. Similarly, we can just get some idea by hearing about Maharaj. What is it? Why is it so great? But we can't really know what it is. Even in the Bhagavatam, Shukadevji didn't give a full detailed description of Maharaj because Parikshit kept questioning. Okay, how did gopis get the divine world again? Because many of the gopis loved Krishna in what seems to be a worldly way. Some of them didn't even know he was God, and they just loved him like you would love any boy in this world, and yet they attained the divine abode. They crossed over Maya. How is it possible? He kept asking questions like this, and Shukadevji explained a couple of times that Krishna is divine, so if you attach your mind to anyone divine, you'll attain the divine abode. Whether you knew they were divine or not doesn't matter. You loved them. You surrendered to them. So you get the result of attaching your mind to that divine personality. He explained like this a couple of times, but Parikshit kept questioning, but he's meeting with gopis in the middle of the night? That's against dharma, and Krishna is the founder of dharma, the teacher of dharma. He's supposed to set the example of what dharma is, and here he's breaking all the rules of dharma. He kept questioning. So in the end, Shukadevji said, okay, I think I explained enough about Maharaj. If he's just going to keep questioning, then he's not qualified to hear anymore. And we're not even near the level of King Parikshit. Our minds are much more polluted with worldly desires than that. Panche bhule deh sudhi chhathi bhavana ras ki. Swami Haridas ji says there are different levels of divine absorbment. He says in the 5th level, you're so absorbed that you lose your total consciousness of your physical body. Beyond that, in the 6th level, that's where you're qualified for ras. So imagine, what is our state? Never mind losing consciousness of our body. All we can think about is our body. What our belly wants, what our tongue wants, what our eyes want to see, what our ears want to hear. We're so attached to our physical desires. So we're not nearly qualified. But we are aspiring devotees. We are trying to follow the path of devotion. So out of their gracefulness, graciousness, God and the saints have revealed little glimpses of what Maharaj is. And we can understand the greatness of Ras and Maharaj by certain instances, like when Lakshmiji, see, when Shri Krishna was going to start doing Maharaj, he wanted to do Maharaj. First he did dhyan of Radha Rani. Bhagavan apitaratri sharadot phulla mallika vikshirantun manaschakre yogamayamupashrita. the first shlok of the Ras Panchadhyay in the Bhagavatam. Shri Krishna thought of doing Maharas, so he, in his mind, surrendered to his Yogamaya Shakti, Radha Rani. Radha Rani gave permission for him to do Ras. So then he played on his flute, and imbued in the sound of that flute was Radha Rani's special grace. So the sound of the flute traveled all over the Brahmand. But ordinary souls couldn't hear it. Even the Gwalbals couldn't hear it because they aren't at that qualification. You have to be in the Madhurya Bhav section of Premanand. And that too, not just Madhurya Bhav, but Samartharati Madhurya Bhav, A class of Madhurya Bhav. Only they were able to hear the sound of the flute. So all the gopis came running. But the sound of the flute also went other places in the Brahmand. It went to Kshir Sagar, where Vishnu and Lakshmi were sitting. It went to Kailash Abode, where Shiv and Parvati were sitting. They all heard, oh, Krishna's calling to do Maharas. We also want to. Imagine. Krishna's own other forms, his own divine powers, are coming running to do Maharas. Shivji came. Parvati entered directly because she appears just as a gopi anyway. Shivji couldn't enter because he was so excited he forgot that only gopis get to take part. So he got stopped before he could enter the grounds of Maharas. Gopis stopped him. But when he asked permission, then Radharani granted her permission as long as he took his Gopeshwar Mahadev form. So he became a beautiful young gopi, and he also entered and paired up with one of the forms of Krishna and danced. Lakshmi wanted to come and take part. Vishnu said, no, we are Supreme Almighty God. We can't go in a Ras Leela. Are you kidding? She said, no, I'm going. This is told in Sam Rahasya Upanishad. So she went and she was extolling the virtues of there's a conversation between Mahavishnu and Mahalakshmi, and it's revealed that only in divine Vrindavan this Ras Leela happens, and it's only with the grace of Radharani that someone can enter there. So Mahalakshmi wanted to go, but she wasn't able to enter because that divine almightiness cannot be manifested in the middle of a divine love Leela. So she was not granted entrance to Maharaj. She watched from across the Yamuna River. She had a desire, though. So she did devotion to Shri Krishna. Yadvanchaya Shrir Lalana Charattapo Vihaya Kaman Suchiram Dhritavrata. Bhagavatam. She went and did devotion with severe austerities for an extremely long period of time with this desire to be able to take part in Ras Leela. But instead of that, she was granted the opportunity to become Rukmini. Shri Krishna's main queen in Dwarika was actually the avatar of Mahalakshmi. So she got a consolation prize, you can say. She wasn't allowed to enter into the Maharas Leela. Hearing all of this, we're reminded, or we're gaining some understanding of what is the greatness of the Maharas Leela, which actually took place at midnight on this very day of Sharad Poornima. When you get some time later, you can read the panel over there, the description of our beautiful shrine. It tells a little bit about Maharas Leela. There's also this picture, this framed picture above the please maintain silence sign. That tells something about Maharas also, as do some of these panels up here that tell actually the last one on the right in the corner tells a little bit about Maharas. So this Mandir is called Shree Raseshwari Radha Rani Mandir. And that's connected to Maharaj. See, Shree Raseshwari, the Ishwari of Ras, the controller, the queen of Ras, that is Radha Rani. That's why Krishna had to get her permission to play his flute. Ras Leela only happens with the grace of Radha Rani. Ras Leela only happens with the permission of Radha Rani. So this mandir is directly, philosophically speaking, connected to this Maharas Leela, which means it's directly connected to this Sharad Poornima night. And when I say Maharas happened on this night at midnight, you might wonder how long it lasted. So if it started at midnight, they only had a few hours till first light, right? So it couldn't have taken that long. No, actually, it lasted for a whole night of Brahma. 4.32 billion years for us. For the rest of the earth planet, it was like Krishna hit the pause button. With his Yogamaya, he just hit pause. So everybody kept sleeping, all the Gwalbals kept sleeping, Mother Yashoda kept sleeping, and everybody just peacefully slept for a whole night of Brahma. And during that whole time, Maharas happened. Can you imagine a Leela that lasted 4.32 billion years? But of course, you don't get bored of divine bliss. The bliss goes on increasing every second, every moment. At the end of the Maharas Leela, to refresh themselves, Krishna, Radha and gopis went down onto the sandy bank of Yamuna and relaxed and cooled off in the nice, refreshing water of Yamunaji. So there were many different facets to this Maharas Leela. In the middle, Krishna disappeared, and then gopis went looking for him in the jungle, and then he reappeared. So there are many different facets. You can listen to the Ras Panchadhyay series of lectures by Sri Maharajji. I think that's also being subtitled at this time, so that'll be available with English subtitles shortly. So it's much better to hear about Maharas Leela from Sri Maharajji. Now, as I was saying, this mandir we're sitting in, this is Shree Raseshwari Radha Rani Mandir. So Radha Rani is the Ishwari of Ras, and Maharas Leela happened on Sharad Poornima at midnight. And this mandir, for that reason, was inaugurated on Sharad Poornima 25 years ago. So this is the 25th anniversary of Radha Madhav Dham. Now at that time, we used to hold the sadhana shivir early because then people, whoever could, would go to India for the full month of sadhana over there. But we used to have a 1 month sadhana here that ended just before Sharad Poornima. So the actual date that the mandir was inaugurated was not the actual full moon night of Sharad Poornima, but it was close. It was just before that. So it was actually our Sharad Poornima celebrations. We just celebrated a little early so that nobody would miss the celebrations in India. So that's why I still say that this mandir was inaugurated on Sharad Poornima, because it was on the day of our Sharad Poornima celebrations over here. We also had a Rath Yatra that day, like we always have Rath Yatra when Maharajji was here, and we have Rath Yatra every year with Radharani. So we had Rath Yatra on our Sharad Poornima celebrations of that day. And on top of all of that, Sharad Poornima is also the time that Sri Maharajji appeared. Also at midnight of the full moon night, Sharad Poornima. So at the same time that Maharas happened, that is the time Sri Maharajji chose to appear in this world. And in his more than 91 years, Sri Maharajji taught and imbibed and revealed nothing but the bliss of Maharaj. That's what his whole life was. That's who he is. So how could he reveal or teach anything else? And when he came here in 2005, he further sanctified this place. Although it was only with his grace that Radha Rani was established here in this Mandir. But then when Sri Maharajji came here and he physically entered the shrine, it was like he was further sanctifying. Even though Radha Rani and Radha Krishna had been established here in 1995, but Maharajji further sanctified the shrine, the temple, and the whole grounds by his being here in 2005 and 2007. So this Mandir, this shrine, this Radha Madhav Dham is truly a very special place. Although Radha and Krishna are omnipresent, but when Shree Raseshwari Radha Rani was established in 1995, when that Pran Pratishtha happened, real Radha Rani took avatar here in America, right? Bharat is the spiritual capital of the whole world. So all the avatars of Bhagwan, all the great saints, the revelation of the scriptural knowledge, all of that happens in Bharatvarsh because that's the capital, spiritually speaking, and it emanates out of there for the rest of the world. But from time to time, a little extra grace happens. So that's how we got this appearance of Radharani here in the Western world to grace all the souls, all the deserving and desiring souls over here on the western half of the globe. The spiritual epicenter became this Radha Madhav Dham, and that was further strengthened when Sri Maharajji himself came and visited here 2 times. So this Sharad Poornima night is a very important night for all the devotees. When we think about the Maharaj, even if we just think about Maharaj Leela, it's important. But then when we add to that, this is the birthday, the appearance day of Jagadguru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj, who came here on earth to reveal Mahabhav, to reveal Ras to all the ordinary souls who weren't qualified to enter Maharaj Leela with Radha Krishna 5,000 years ago. Maharajji revealed that same ras to us through his kirtan, through his lectures, through his casual association with us. Through every breath of every day, he was pouring that same ras that Radha Krishna poured 5,000 years ago. So to commemorate the actual time of his appearance, midnight of Sharad Poornima, that's a very special thing to do. So I'll continue more on this topic on Sunday. The next live lecture will be Sunday morning. And I'll continue explaining about Sri Maharajji's contributions to all the spiritual wealth of this earth and the spiritual progress of the devotees. So now let us spend a few minutes doing some kirtan. Gopi Jan Vallabh Shyam Radhe Ramana Shyam जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
गोपी जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
गोपी जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
राधे रमण श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
राधे रमण श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
राधे रमण श्याम राधे रमण श्याम जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
गोपी जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
गोपी जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
गोपी जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
गोपी जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
राधे रमण श्याम राधे रमण श्याम रमण श्याम राधे रमण श्याम रमण श्याम राधे रमण श्याम जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम
जन वल्लभ श्याम राधे रमण श्याम।
श्रीमद सद्गुरु सरकार की, अलबेली सरकार की, श्री रासेश्वरी राधा रानी की, राधा माधव धाम की। So there will be a couple more live speeches coming up. As I mentioned, on Sunday, in 2 days, I'll continue this topic, explaining more about Shri Maharajji's contributions to the world. On Wednesday, we'll be celebrating Karwa Chauth here. So those who want to fast, you can fast. We'll be having some chalnis set up here, so you can come and have darshan of our Vrindavan Chandra Shri Maharajji before breaking the fast. And I'll give a lecture that night on the topic of Karwa Chauth. And that day is also Maharajji's Chhathi celebration. So that will be Wednesday. And then the following Sunday, Rameshwari Didi will be here, so she'll be giving a lecture that day. So other than Karwa Chauth, there are no other celebration days coming next week, but there are plenty more coming up ahead once we get closer to Diwali. We'll be celebrating Maharajji's Barhon. Then we have Dhanteras, we have Choti Diwali, we have Govardhan Puja, then we have Bhaiya Dooj. So once Diwali comes close, then we have a lot more celebrations. Of course, Ammaji's birthday, Chhathi, Barhon, we'll be celebrating all of that. And on the final weekend of this intensive, which is Thanksgiving weekend, we actually have, let me see if I can remember all of this. Okay, Dev Prabodhini Ekadashi is Wednesday, so you'll all have Thursday off, hopefully. So Wednesday night is Dev Prabodhini Ekadashi. Maharajji always had us do at least Kirtan until midnight on that night. So we'll be doing midnight Kirtan. Then Thursday is Tulsi Vivaha. So we'll be celebrating that. And then Friday is Maharajji's Mahaprayan Divas. So we'll also be commemorating that. And then on Saturday, what I was thinking to do was have a little extra to have even more chanting. Something we've done at different centers around is to chant the whole Bhakti Shatak in one day. So we'll try to do that on the